This is The Morgan Show. Morgan White Jr. Call 617-254-1030. Join the group and hang out with Morgan on WBZ News Radio 1030.
1:07 in the morning at our plush studios. I'm not going to say plush, but overly ostentatious, because that was Norm Nathan's line. And I learned a long time ago, you don't steal shtick. I am going to bring a gentleman in who was on with me back in March or April, and he's a man with 3 first names, but we're going to go by his middle name, Adam Michael James, who wrote the Bewitched Compendium, as thick as some phone books. And off of that, he wrote kind of a what-if book about continuing the stories of DARRIN and SAMANTHA and circumstances that happened around their wedding. Not true, but it was through his mind's eye that he came up with this concept, and it worked. So, Michael, welcome to WBZ.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Good to have you back. And when I called you to do this, I have an interesting concept. I don't know if it will work, and I don't know if you feel this is a good concept, but everything focuses on Samantha and DARRIN, also a little Endora thrown in, but there were other people that were integral parts of that show. Some were minor characters, some were major secondary characters, and I want to talk about those characters. I'm hoping my audience will pick up on what I'm trying to do and do the same thing. So I'll give the phone number now. If you were a fan of Bewitched, you don't have to stick to my premise that I'm bringing up. You can talk Bewitched in any way, shape, or form. If you have your hands on one or both of those books, I want you to call in 617-254-1030 or the toll-free number 888-929-WBZ. And I'm going to just jump right in and talk about Larry Tate. We were talking about him earlier, you and I, and he's one of those people who could just knife you in the back as he shakes your hand with a smile. And
exactly.
as the years went on with that show, he wasn't as prominent in the first season as he became through the subsequent seasons. And it's funny because David White, the actor who portrayed Larry Tate, had done other TV work. I saw him on a Wagon Train. I saw him on a Perry Mason. And normally, let me pick somebody like a Denver Pyle. He always played the same kind of role, whether it was a good guy or not a good guy. He always portrayed the same kind of role. But David White was not typecast, and he was not the kind of person I would think producers would want for a Larry Tate. So let's talk about him, the actor and the character.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, what I think is interesting about Larry Tate is we know him, as you said, he'll knife you in the back while he's smiling at you. But what's really interesting, and this is one of the things that the Bewitched Continuum covers because it kind of treats the series as a whole, is that Larry didn't even start that brown-nosing stuff until 3rd season.
Okay.
But that's what we remember him for because David White just brought so much of that duality to the character. When we were talking before, you had mentioned that it would be very easy for the audience to hate a character like Larry, but
yes,
because of what David White brought to the role, it's like he just tiptoed up to that line of unredeemable. But then, and every once in a while, Larry would get a chance to show his humanity, and I think that's what made it work.
When you think of a character like Dr. Smith on Lost in Space, he possessed some of the same skullduggery. He was capable of skullduggery as Larry Tate was. But you were either for him or against him. TV fans love to hate him. Maybe that's the best way I could put it. But what was the pulse of Larry Tate's character as far as you speaking to other Bewitched fans?
As far as I can tell, I've never seen an anti-Larry post anywhere.
Okay.
He's just one of those people that you kind of roll your eyes at him and you kind of just wink and nod at him and just go, okay, well, that's Larry. That's just Larry being Larry. He's just pulling a McMahon and Tate. Every time I talk about my books, I feel like I'm pulling a McMahon and Tate. But what I find really interesting, though, about the character, and again, this is just something I noticed in taking the series as a whole. It's certainly not something the show ever acknowledged again. But in first season, there was an episode called Eat at Mario's, and it had to do with Samantha and Endora, trying to help out this one struggling Italian restaurant versus McMahon at Tate, who is trying to help this pizza conglomerate.
Right.
And Larry has this moment where he says he's afraid of rejection, and he hates to lose a client because it just brings up this fear of rejection. And once I saw that, it kind of put all his brown-nosing and backstabbing into perspective, because it's like, oh, this is why he's doing it. It's not just he's a jerk. He's like us. Name one person who isn't afraid of rejection on some level. So it sort of humanized them, even though at times, it could get kind of ridiculous. Like there was a 3-episode stretch where he fired Darrin, 3 weeks in a row. That got kind of crazy. I think maybe they, why would you go back to an employer like that? But you had to keep Larry as Darrin's boss in the show, because that was the conceit.
Right. And it worked.
It did work. Although I think Darrin should have at least had his own agency for 1 or 2 episodes just to teach Larry a lesson. But, they didn't go there. But it's a nice thought.
Well, they almost went there. There were a couple of clients who, either with or without witchcraft, loved Darrin, loved his concepts, and wanted to put him into his own, the Stevens Corporation. And it never happened, of course. Now,
that's true.
I have a break to take, and I'm going to give you a question to think about. I'm sure you know or have a feeling for the answer. Paul Lynde was the driving instructor in the first season that Samantha had as her test master. Can you pass this test, Mrs. Stevens? And all of a sudden now, next season, he's Uncle Arthur. So there's something William Asher or Saul Sachs or somebody saw in Paul Lynde and decided that would be a refreshing character to help plots along. And if you know about that, we'll talk about that. Anyone else who would like to talk about Bewitched on any level, give us a call, 617-254-1030, 888-929-1030. I am Morgan, and this is Michael, the man with 3 first names for his name, Adam.
Hello.
Michael James. And ready for our break?
Uh-huh.
Let's take it, Michael. Time and temperature here at BZ, 116, exactly 116. And when I'm 64 degrees.
The Morgan Show on WBZ News Radio 1030.
1:19 in the morning. Thank you for listening to The Morgan Show here on WBZ. I am Morgan. There's my producer, Andrew, and here's my guest, Mr. Adam Michael James, who is a huge fan of Bewitched. He's written a couple of books about it, and if you're a Bewitched fan, the Bewitched Compendium, you have to have on your library shelf. It's just a must. I have one. Maybe you should too. And before we took the break, I wanted to have you comment on how Paul Lynde went from just being another actor on the series to then being given the power of being a reoccurring role.
Yes, Paul Lynde as Harold, Samantha's driving instructor.
Right.
And, of course, driving is the only way to fly. No, I think what you said before is absolutely true. I think when he stepped in for that role, they liked him so much that they decided to create the role of Uncle Arthur for him. And his comic timing was, of course, unparalleled. It's hard to believe that, including the Harold appearance, Paul Lynde was only in 12 episodes. That's how much of an impact he made. That he was, in barely half a season's worth of episodes.
Right.
So we remember him. And I think it was a pattern that the show had in recognizing talent and creating roles for them, because the same thing happened with Bernard Fox when he came on as the witch debunker Osgood Reitmeyer in second season. And then at the end of third season, he shows up as Dr. Bombay. And you could also say that about Alice Ghostly. She showed up in second season as a bumbling mortal maid. And then sixth season, she comes on as a bumbling witch maid,
right,
as Esmeralda, of course. And so I think the show did have this way of just knowing gold when they had it. And lucky us.
Dr. Bombay, come quick right away.
Exactly.
Now, I have something to read to you. I'm going to take a phone call. For another reason, I have 13 TV guides from April to June 1965, and they were all
cool.
put together. Oh, I've got 5 or 6 of these books. They were all put together for then WHDH Channel 5 TV, and it was common across the landscape for TV stations to have 13 TV guides representing a quarter of the year, and that way they could see how TV shows are doing and get an idea of the pulse of the TV viewing public. And Bewitched, 9 p.m., Thursday, April 22nd, 1965. Samantha's plans for a cozy Sunday with Darrin go out the window when he is locked out and ends up breakfasting with his new next-door neighbor, attractive...
Danger O'Reilly.
There you go. I didn't even have to finish. You got it. Played by Beverly Adams.
Yep, like she says, when you're attracted to someone, why not?
Yeah. And you knew that episode automatically. There's no stopping you.
That's how scary I am. Yep.
All right. Well, let's bring in. My cursor isn't behaving as it should. And, of course, I want to go to San Francisco. And since I don't have Samantha's powers, but I do have the power of clicking that button. And now here's David in San Francisco. David, say hello to Michael.
Hey, Michael. How you doing, man?
Hello, David. All the way out there in San Francisco.
Yes, sir. And Morgan, hello. I haven't talked to you in a while. Morgan, first of all, I wanted to get something. I remember I asked you a couple of weeks ago about Jimmy Hart, the wrestler. He was in a band called the Gentrys.
Yes. No. Nobody can do the shingling like I do.
They put the song out, Keep On Dancing.
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to, get that off my... Anyhow, aside from Dr. Bombay, I really like those next-door neighbors, Agnes and Gladys... Abner and Gladys Kravitz.
You'd get it right eventually. I knew you would.
But they were always like in hysterics just because they saw something,
No, not they.
Like long-term,
not they.
Long-term blue or something. Pardon?
Agnes.
Agnes and
Gladys was, yeah.
Yeah, she thought she saw something. Abner never saw whatever it was his wife saw, and he would
very rarely.
Yeah, just shrug his shoulders. Oh, Gladys.
Gladys, take your medicine.
That's what he would say.
Right, yeah. But, that Bernard Fox was quite an actor, too. He was on several things. He was at Malcolm Merriweather on the Andy Griffith Show. he was at travel through, and he caused an accident, and then he became the tailor's servant or something,
and he was at the same time as doing Bewitched with reoccurring roles, or a role that came around every several episodes. Yeah. He did the same thing on Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, right.
Yes, yeah. Colonel Crittenden.
Yeah. He was also on an episode in Columbo where he played the ship's doctor.
No.
The bad guy.
He played the ship's purser. He was not. I saw the episode just this week. He was the ship's.
I saw that a month ago.
He was the ship's purser, and
exactly. Thank you.
And Patrick McNee was the ship's captain.
Yeah.
And that was a great episode. Robert Vaughn was the bad guy.
Yeah, and Dean Stockwell.
Yes, he was a musician in the band.
Did you ever see a movie? Maureen, did you ever see a movie, The Boy with Green Hair?
Yes, I was back from the 30s or 40s.
It was the late 40s, yeah. It was considered one of the first kind of prejudice films because they were all, hated and made fun of him because he was different,
Chip, my little lad, chip again, sir. Yeah. How many miles to Dublin town? 4 and then, sir. Chip, my little lad, chip again, sir. And that was a song from that movie.
Yeah.
In case you care.
Yeah, you're good, man. And one more thing. I just found out today that Boston is the capital of Massachusetts.
Then you blame your elementary school teachers for not getting that point across to you.
I will, and I went to Catholic school, too.
They should have used that ruler on your knuckles and made sure you knew that Boston was our capital.
Yep, I never realized that. Okay, I want to let other callers get in, and maybe I'll call you back during trivia.
No, there's no trivia tonight, but I'm on tomorrow night filling in for Bradley, and there'll be trivia then.
Okay, thank you, guys, and good to hear from you.
Thank you for calling, David.
Thanks for calling, David.
All right. Where were we? I was...
Hey, while we're off topic of Bewitched, I wanted to mention something that came up during the last hour. They actually do still make Sanka.
Yeah.
I was listening to you guys, and I'm like, wait a minute, I have to know this. So, of course, I Googled it.
Okay.
And it looks like they invented it in 1905 already, and it was introduced into the States in 1909. I don't know if you can actually get it in stores, but I did find it on Amazon. So there you go.
Well, they had two legendary TV personalities doing the commercials on network shows back in the day. Danny Thomas on his show, and Marcus Welby, Robert Young. I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember him doing the commercials, like when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. What other shows besides Bewitched held your attention?
Well, I mean, it's funny because when I was a kid, I would watch all those 60s, 70s shows that, in syndication. I drew of Jeannie, Gilligan's Island, McHale's Navy, all that stuff. Loved all of it.
Right.
Bewitched was the only one that really stuck. But, I mean, I also, was a teenager in the 80s, so I got into a lot of the, not a lot, some of the 80s shows. I'm a big, big Dynasty fan. The original Dynasty, thank you, not the reboot they have now.
Oh, gosh. Was that awful or was that awful? The reboot.
Yes and no.
The reboot.
Oh, the reboot. They had some interesting ideas, but to me, it's so compressed that I have a hard time making a sense of it. The way it's paced, I just have a hard time understanding what's going on.
Right.
But love the original Dynasty. In fact, I'm going to be 50 in a few weeks, and I'm having a Dynasty-themed birthday party. So we'll see. No caviar because I don't have that kind of budget, but we'll make. Damn you, Blake.
And, very good. Very good, Joan Collins. And, Joan Collins... I
also do a very good sable.
Let me hear your sable.
I also do a very good sable, dear. Don't sit too close to the microphone. It might back up on you.
And who played Sable? I forget right now.
Stephanie Beacham.
That's it. I could not... When they added her character, remember the first time that they added her character, like she was in a bubble bath, talking to.
That's right. That's right. On the Colbys. That's
yes.
right. No. Before the Colbys.
Right.
You're right. It was actually on Dynasty right before the Colbys.
It was on Dynasty.
Table in the bathtub. Yeah.
There you go. I remember things like that.
Getting filled up by Charlton Heston.
And now, on that note, I've got to take a CBS News hit. No, it just worked out that way. I'm not avoiding it. But you and I will come back after a little bit of news from the CBS network.
The Morgan Show, 50,000 watts of Morgan. WBZ News Radio 1030.
I'm having fun with these TV guides. And, Michael, I'm going to read to you another excerpt. And as soon as you know where I'm going, interrupt. And this is an episode.
This has been a film-based production, darling. Sorry, couldn't help myself.
Very good, Ava Gabor. Very good. And do you know?
For my mother, she has a Dutch accent.
Well, before I read this, do you know of all the people who did that? Carolyn Jones did it at the end of Addams Family. There are many others, but the only male to do it. And he was not the lead. No. He was not the lead.
No, I don't have a clue. I'm ashamed. Now I'm going to have to hide.
This has been a Filmways presentation. Larry Keating on Mr. Ed.
Oh, jeez.
He's the only male. Now, I don't know if Connie Hines didn't have the voice they wanted to do the liner or Edna Skinner, but they chose Larry Keating.
Maybe his agent had some pull with somebody.
Well, don't forget, he had recognition through that show and previously on Burns and Allen, and George Burns was the silent producer-creator of Mr. Ed, so maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, let me read this from June 3rd, 1965. Samantha thinks her elfin cousin, Edgar, is the best guardian a young witch ever had, and now he shows up again to protect her from her mortal husband. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yes, Cousin Edgar, number 36.
And do you know who played Cousin Edgar?
Oh, geez. I think I do, but I'm almost afraid to say in case I'm wrong.
Say it.
It wasn't Artie Shaw, was it?
You were half right. Artie Johnson.
Artie Johnson.
From Laugh-In.
I knew it was Artie. Yes, I knew it couldn't be Artie Shaw, was it?
Yeah, he was busy playing a wind instrument. Artie Shaw.
Well.
Okay, and
it's 1:30 in the morning. Come on.
Don't I know it? Don't you know it? Because you're ahead of me. You're in Atlantic
That's
time.
Right. That's right. Up here in Prince Edward Island, Canada.
All right. Now,
but
you first. Go ahead.
Oh, what I wanted to say was what I thought that's so funny about that episode when you think about it is how could Samantha have a cousin who's an elf? Because it would mean, I forget what cousins are offhand. I'd have to look it up, but it means one of her parents or one of her parents' brothers or sisters, had a mate who was an elf. That's
right.
The only way that works.
They're not asking you to know lineage and logic in 1965, 6, 7, 8.
Oh, that's true.
They're asking you to accept what they tell you is a fact.
Oh, of course, and that's what TV continuity was all about back then. But that's why it was so much fun for me to look at it through today's lens, But it's like, okay, so who was shacking up with an elf? We got to figure that one out.
Well, this is where I bring up the subject I told you I was going to add to this. Serena, can you talk about how the writers and Saul Sachs and William Asher and if she had something to do with creating a role where she could double for that role, Elizabeth Montgomery. How did we come up with Serena?
Well, you know that as the writer of the Bewitched Continuum, my focus is more on what we see on the screen, the fictional aspects, than the behind-the-scenes stuff. So I might not know as much as other people would, but my guess is that you might remember the first season episode, Which Was Which?
Yes.
Or Which is Which, where Endora turned herself into Samantha to cover for her at a dress fitting because Samantha had to be somewhere else, and ends up, dating one of Darrin's mortal friends, and all sorts of chaos ensues because there's two Samanthas. If you look at that performance, where Elizabeth Montgomery is kind of trying to mimic Agnes Moorehead, you can already see Proto-Serena in that performance.
Okay.
And I think that might be what inspired them to take it a little bit further. Of course, we didn't see Serena until the episode where Tabitha was born in January 1966. And what's so wild is that everybody remembers Serena as the flower child, the
right.
wild child, and she was a debutante when she started. She sounded very, very mellow and classy, and it wasn't until later that her voice went up. It was just part of the character development. But that's what I think Serena's origins were actually Endora as Samantha in first season,
and her constant belittling. Like Endora never called Darrin Darwood, or the other nicknames that abounded when they came to picking on Darrin. She picked on Larry.
Only a handful of times. Yeah. She did, but she was always flirting with Larry, too.
Yes. What did you call him? Cotton Top.
Cotton Top, yeah. Actually, it was, well... This is how nerdy I am with this, okay? It was actually Samantha who was pretending to be Serena that came up with Cotton Top, but then later Serena took it on to herself. But Larry was tempted a couple of times.
Right. Louise would have, how can I be delicate here, removed something if he dared cross that line.
This is true. Both Louises would have.
Yes. Now, I'm going to talk about one of my early favorite single episodes, and the lineage of it is what drew me into watching this episode. It was the episode, and I cannot remember the child's first name, but it was Jerry Mather's kid brother, who I think played a character named Malcolm, that somehow Samantha had befriended. It was like a neighborhood kid.
It was Marshall, yeah.
Marshall, okay. And they were
Marshmallow
watching him play in a Little League game. And it came down to him rounding third. Does he score? And Darrin is telling Samantha not to interfere. Let it happen as it's supposed to happen. And he slid and was safe. And Samantha was glad she didn't intercede. But what do you know about that episode?
Well, that was Little Pitchers Have Big Fears. It was the sixth episode of the show, and yeah, that was Jerry Mather's brother, Jimmy Mathers, who was actually I met him at Bewitched Fanfare in 2014. That was pretty wild.
Okay.
But yeah, that was one of the first Samantha tries to help unfortunate child episodes. It was that kind of came out of the more.
They did that a number of times.
Yeah. There was the supercar one where she tried to help this kid, win a soapbox derby. Not supercars, a soapbox derby.
Yes.
I get that mixed up because I kind of don't like either one of those episodes, so they kind of blur together for me.
Okay.
Well, Soapbox Derby to me was just like a little bit too Wonderful World of Disney meets Bewitched for me, but that's just me. Yeah, but no, that was a cool episode because it was really the first. I mean, Gladys Kravitz's first episode was obviously the second episode, Be It Ever So Mortgage, where they move into Morning Glory Circle. But Little Pitchers Have Big Fears was the first one where you really see Gladys like really, starting to become suspicious of Samantha. Because like when she first started witnessing the witchcraft, she didn't know what to think, but now she was sure something was going on. So it was really kind of the first big Gladys episode as far as I was concerned.
And that's the key. Whenever they needed a jolt, the series, they would have Abner be deadpan, not noticing or seeing anything, and Gladys noticing animals appear out of nowhere or whatever magic occurred. And I think
she was actually very sharp.
Yeah, she was, but her husband thought that she was exaggerating and needed some sort of medicine to bring her back down.
I think they call that being in denial.
Okay.
Well, I think he probably just, Gladys, there was one episode, I can't remember which one it was. It was early on, where he said something about, first it was yoga, then it was this, then it was this. Now you see strange things across the street. So it kind of seemed like he came into it kind of just going, this is just Gladys being Gladys.
Yeah, this is my wife. I got to deal with her.
Exactly. This is what I signed on for. So I think that's why he just got to the point where he didn't take her seriously anymore, because she must have been pulling this kind of stuff through their entire marriage. But
okay. Now I know the answer.
That's my theory.
Okay, and your theory should be trusted. I know the answer to the question I'm going to give you to think about during the break, and I want both of these questions addressed. Why did we lose Dick York? I know. I'll just say the health response. But why did we lose Dick York and get Dick Sargent? And also, speaking of Gladys Kravitz, why did they do the same thing with her, that actress? And when we come back, you can explain these things to us, your students, loving the knowledge you have shared of Bewitched. So, Michael, you get ready. We're going to take a break, sell some soap here, and then you and I will be back to talk to America about Bewitched. Time and temperature, 147, and once again, when I'm 64 degrees.
This is The Morgan Show. Morgan White Jr., right here on WBZ News Radio 1030.
1:50 in the morning. If you want, you only have 10 minutes left to call in and chit and chat with my guest, Adam Michael James. And a labor of love was putting together the Bewitched Compendium. It is a thick book. Every episode is chronicled and discussed in the book, tidbits about the show, behind-the-scenes stuff. And as if that was not enough to keep him busy, he wrote another Bewitched book, kind of a, what do they call those in the comic books? What-if stories. So
I would say non-canonical, yeah.
Okay, there you go. I'll take that. And tell the story of why we had two actors playing Darrin and also Gladys Kravitz.
Well, because Endora turned Darrin into... No, just kidding. Didn't you see that episode, Morgan? Come on, you're supposed to be next week. No, what happened was... and Dick York sustained a back injury when he was filming the movie. They came to Quadora in 1959.
Correct.
Everybody was lifting up a train car, and they all let go at the same time except for Dick, and he wrenched his back. And so from the very first day, he started on Bewitched. He had back problems. That's why you see him, Darrin, lying down more and more as the time goes on. And finally, it just got to such a point he couldn't do the episodes anymore.
Right.
So it wasn't that he didn't want to do it. It's just that his back wouldn't let him do it anymore. And that's when they brought in Dick Sargent. Now, it is my understanding, I say that because I've heard a little bit of contradiction to this, but it's my understanding that they considered Dick Sargent first, and that he was busy on a project or something, and that was why they put in Dick York. But I could be wrong about that. But, of course, people are still fighting over which Darrin was better, 55 years later.
Right.
And to me, it's just, Dick York was the Darrin Stevens of the 60s, and Dick Sargent was the Darrin Stevens of the 70s, and that's where it is.
Nice way to look at that. And,
yeah.
And the other?
Yes. The first Gladys Kravitz, Alice Pierce, unfortunately passed away from ovarian cancer during the filming of second season. It's really, unfortunately, obvious when you watch the episodes how much gaunt she gets throughout. So she passed away, and that was why they brought in Sandra Gould, who played Gladys. Actually, ironically, through all the color episodes, it seems like a lot of the recast happened during that split between black and white and color. It happened with Irene Vernon's Louise and Casey Rogers' Louise as well.
Right. And we're almost to the end of the night, and I have to ask this question. Who came up with the idea of putting Darrin and Samantha on Bewitched from A Million Years BC to the Flintstones?
Oh, wow. I honestly don't know.
Oh, okay.
if any of my fellow Bewitched authors out there are out there, you've got like 6 minutes to call in. So, that
always struck me as just such an. Now, the Flintstones did do that. Take well-known people and have them be themselves. Back in the day of the Flintstones, Jimmy O'Neill, who was the MC, for lack of a better term, of Shindig, and Jimmy O'Neill Stone kind of doing the same role on the Flintstones, and Anne Margaret being Anne Margrock back in the day on the Flintstones. So I was just curious if you knew how that idea came to be.
Yeah, I wish I could say I knew. I'm a little ashamed that I don't know. But again, my focus is the fiction and not as much the behind the scenes. But I'm going to guess that there was, I don't know. Did they have the same sponsor or something? Were they both sponsored by Chevrolet? I mean, maybe that was it. Or
the Flintstones were not Chevrolet, and the Flintstones were not Quaker Oats, as Bewitched was. So I don't think that was it.
Well, then it must be like you said. I mean, even today you have actors from other shows, and so like on Family Guy, for example, you always have the people from Star Trek Next Generation popping up on there. So it's the same idea. So, that was a classic episode, that Flintstones episode, though.
I'm glad you mentioned Family Guy. This is me digressing. I'm watching a Family Guy episode the other day, not even paying attention to it. And then I hear this song, and instantly I knew where they went. And they copied as much of the song and the action around this song as they could. It was from Robin and the Seven Hoods. It was the Mr. Booze song. I don't know if you're a Family Guy fan or not, but that was Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. et al. Don't mess with Mr. Booze. And in the Family Guy, I guess Peter periodically from time to time has had problems with alcohol. And just almost copying the film, note for note, dance step for dance step. And I have never seen that done intentionally before. I digress.
Hey, Family Guy's musical sequences are the best.
Amazing.
I mean, I haven't seen every episode. I kind of stopped about halfway through, but Seth MacFarlane is actually an amazing vocalist. He's put out his own album of covers. He does really great stuff.
Right. Now that we've talked about Bewitched for just under an hour, is there a Bewitched fact that a lot of people have forgotten or have expanded into a different direction than the truth? Anything about Bewitched you want my audience to know about that is a fact, and spread the rumor that this is the fact behind the myth.
Do you mean like a fictional fact or behind-the-scenes fact?
Either way. Take it either way you want.
I'm going to go with fiction because that's my area of expertise. The first person to actually put a spell on Darrin or turn him into something was Samantha, not Endora. Endora didn't even put a spell on him until like the Eye of the Beholder, which was episode 22. So,
okay.
And Samantha turned him into a newspaper in episode 10 to protect him from Maurice. So, because the big thing was that Endor was always putting spells on him, but nope.
And never got his name right.
No, that's not true. That's not true. There were a handful of times that she got it right, either under duress or, actually sincerely apologizing. It was rare. I think it was in the single digits. In the Bewitched Continuum, in addition to the covering all the episodes and exploring the characters and the continuity, I also made lists of the clients, the witch illnesses,
Michael.
How many?
I gotta start.
Time.
Yeah, it's time, and I got news in 5 seconds. Michael, thank you. We'll do it again. Everybody, here's CBS News.